Welcome to the informational meeting for Renew Rensselaer. My name is Peter Vanderzee. I graduated in 1970, and I'm a founding member of Renew Rensselaer. I'm going to be the MC for today, presenting a few slides. We're also going to have two of our other founding members speak. And I know you wouldn't be here if you didn't care. We care too. And we're not interested in tearing down, placing blame, or doing anything negative. Our objective is to build up. This is a great institution. It's been wonderful for my career, I can tell you that. And we want to make it wonderful for 100 more years. Okay? That's our objective. Let me introduce the rest of our team to you right now. Ted Merzak, class of 66, one of the founding members of Renew Rensselaer. John Krob, where's John? I don't know where John went. Everybody, I think, has met John. He'll be back. Yeah. He can't. Where's John, guys? He's not around. All right, he'll be back. He's one of the founding members, too. Julia Lusner, right back there. Okay, class of 08. This is her 10th reunion. She was a former GM. Michael Cuozzo, back in the back, class of 18. And Michael Gardner in the back, class of 17. We found out really early when we formed this group that none of us, we're all old guys. None of us were savvy on social media or how to do anything. We like paper and pencil. So many of you probably feel that this is John Krob. Say hello, I introduced you already. Many of you probably feel the same way in our age group. But these folks have been incredibly helpful to us in not only building a website, but sending out emails and having a presence on social media. And we thank them very, very much. They're hard workers, and they're as dedicated as we are. This is a long-term effort for us. We never entered this with the idea that this was going to be a 6-month effort. We really see that there's two parts to this, and we're still in part one. And part one is understanding and acknowledging the issues. I might have said the word problem. I'll let you interpret it that any way you want to. Second phase, we're not there yet, is to implement solutions. So our purpose today is to inform you what we found and have a discussion afterwards of whether or not this is significant for you as individuals, as potential people who are going to be supporting the Institute going forward, and what anything you might want to have to say about this. So we're very, very interested, and we're happy you're here. So let me get started. Okay, the purpose of this meeting, and the reason we're here today, really, there was 3 key triggers that started us on the road to founding Renew Rensselaer. Number 1, the cost of MPAC. That has maybe not been widely distributed, but we were able to pull that together. That's an interesting where that started and where it ended up and how much money that utilized. Pension obligations, which became a big issue, especially during the downturn in 07-08 and the legacy pension plan, and the research dollars and how the research dollars were diminishing, not increasing. And I think all of you probably know that the role of the federal government seems to be lessening, not increasing. And frankly, what I see in my business, which is infrastructure across the country, I'm seeing a devolution of power and taxing ability to more of a local government. That's not necessarily good news when you're depending on research money from National Science Foundation or some of the other organizations that support it. So we came together a little over 2 years ago as a group. The 4 of us started the organization, and we've had a number of people affiliated with us over the years. And we've concluded there were 3 major issues that we needed to focus on. Number 1, financial. Number 2, academic. And number 3, governance. And we're going to cover today what we're proposing in the platform that we have out on our website. And we're going to focus also on what's transpired over the last 6 months, which we think is significant, especially with the RAA and their relationship to us, and then eventually how you can help us support this effort. You know, we have a member of the administration with us today, and that's fine. We're okay with that. You know, what we're going to talk about is what we see as facts and factual. The word spin is a negative connotation. We all know that. We see spin every day from every part of the universe that we're in.
Who's here from the administration?
Pardon me? Introduce each other later, okay? I don't want to say right now, but that's okay. We're okay with that. We expected that, and we don't have any problem with that. Because what we're talking about is factual issues, all right? But we found out that when we read the Rensselaer magazine, when we talked to people, and when we saw other publications, what we were getting is positive spin. We met with the chairman of the board of the trustees about 18 months ago, and he essentially admitted that to us. One-on-one conversation. Okay? Well, RPI's financial condition has been deteriorating. The academic rankings are weak compared to peers. I live in Atlanta. Georgia Tech is an organization that is near and dear to my heart because I deal with some people that are graduates of that school. They have zoomed past our RPI in any ranking you want to look at. Okay? And I had a friend there that was a Chem E professor and who's a graduate of RPI. And I said, when we were at RPI was one of the tops. And he said, oh yeah, Georgia Tech was nothing. But now Georgia Tech has really zoomed by RPI, made RPI look like it was standing still. Having dealt with the trustees, several of them, some in the administration, the RAA, these are tough words for us to put up here. Okay, you all can read, but I'm telling you, this is exactly what we've concluded. And it's painful to have to get up here and tell you this. It really is. We don't want it to be this way. We hope this can change, but it is what it is. What we realized, we gathered data from far and near and analyzed it like I don't think anybody else has ever done. But the goals of the Rensselaer plan, whether it's the first one or the second one, let's just talk about the first one, have not been realized. That's just a fact. Okay? A plan is a plan, but the goals haven't been realized, and we're not even close on some of them. We found the financial condition worse than we thought. The academic rankings were difficult to absorb for us. Graduate programs are no longer robust. And having met with 3 of the members of the Board of Trustees, we got essentially a slap in the face. And we all don't live in New York. We all went to New York and met with these people, and it was a disheartening meeting, to say the least. All right. And the RAA, which we've tried to engage very quickly recently, we have found they are really essentially controlled by the administration, which we think is not the right way to go. Okay? We think it can be better. And the campus climate has been a problem. Those of you who are recent graduates, I think, can speak to that too. We've talked to a lot of people. We found that to be an absolute fact. And that's sad. That's very sad. Shouldn't be that way. So let me move on to the next one, and I'm going to hand this off to John Krob. And John is going to take you through some of the financial data.
Thank you, Pete. Just a little background. I was in the other room when Pete introduced us, but my background is I was a civil engineer major and a management minor here. I went on, got my MBA in finance and accounting, and spent 28 years in the financial world, working for commercial and investment banks, and primarily in credit analytics. So I'm for better or for worse term, the numbers guy here. And I retired in 2008 and started focusing on what the situation was with colleges in general. My kids were just finishing up their years, and I had paid some extraordinarily high tuitions, and we're starting to hear about the student loan problem and how kids are going to afford it. And I looked at RPI, and it's like, well, you know, their endowment is really small. How are we going to compete? And then I tried to look at their numbers, and we couldn't get access to the financial statements, and couldn't really understand why the school wouldn't give them out. But eventually I found out that they were available publicly, and started constructing spreadsheets, really, and then ultimately found financial data going back to 1998 and compiled the whole narrative of the financial situation. And you know, it's focused on the revenue line, the credit ratings, the credit statistics, what the giving rates were and the dollars involved, and did some comparisons to similar colleges, and kept coming back to the issue of the value of the endowment, that RPI was really trying to play in the big leagues with a small league endowment. And I think that's something that some of you maybe don't realize. So focusing on the Rensselaer plan and the Rensselaer goals, if you've taken the time to read it carefully, both the original and the refreshed one, the real keystone to the Rensselaer plan was, we're going to grow research activity, and we're going to invest in research facilities, and with that comes greater recognition, attract more quality students, higher quality students, and we'll be able to increase the prestige of the school and then raise more money. Well, that was a strategy that was working through the early 2000s, and of course it continued even through the financial crisis, because one of the things that the Obama administration passed was some fairly aggressive stimulus programs for academic research, and RPI certainly benefited for that, but those dollars started to run out, and you can see from the blue line here, they began to decline in 2013, and they've continued to fall, and Pete alluded to, you know, the whole issue of sources of government funding, and I think there's been an attempt by the school to try to source research revenue from private sources, and we'll see. We will be getting new numbers for 2018 in about a month, and hopefully we'll see some improvement there. But the important point here is the decline in the revenue and the contrast with what was being expended. And I mean, it doesn't take you don't have to be a financial analyst to figure out that size of a gap is a problem from a financial standpoint.
Is that just expenditures related to research, or is that total expenditures?
Well, those are the numbers that RPI files with the federal agencies that compile the statistics. We couldn't get an accurate breakdown on what's in them because that's not public information. So we only had the totals, and that's the number that goes into the Carnegie classification of your research classification 1, 2, or 3. And of course, one of the things that's happened in the last 5 years was RPI's classification went from R1 to R2. So, credit ratings. This is, you know, for those of you who are not financially sophisticated, basically it's your ability to pay back what you owe. And RPI's, over the last 15, 20 years, has had credit downgrades from Standard & Poor's and Moody's. I think 3 notches from Standard & Poor's and 2 from Moody's. Carnegie Mellon's been a solid AA. Case Western, you know, has maintained its strong position, as has Lehigh, MIT. Of course, MIT is a real special case. RIT, maybe not a direct comp, but you know, a regional competitor. And then you can see Worcester Poly also. So let's go on ahead. So why is that? Why is the credit rating declined? One, for sure, is the high debt load. Well, what contributed to the high debt load is part of it is the unfunded pension liability. That's a function of interest rates and the post-financial crisis, as well as people living longer. Capital investments, if you make substantial capital investments and you don't get a good return on it, then you've basically got dead capital, and it's not helping service the debt. And then the result of this is the school had to borrow more money than they expected, and the amount of money, total borrowed money now, exceeds the value of the endowment, which from a financial standpoint is a problem, because your endowment can't generate enough return to even service the debt. I always look at the interest rate, the interest expense plus the operating lease costs, and the fact that the two of those combined exceed the endowment draw. And just as a rule of thumb, the draw from the endowment is the annual amount you draw down, and the rule of thumb is it's about 5% of your total value of the endowment. So there's this substantial interest burden. And when you have that problem, your cash resources are strained. The school has, in recent years, been very reliant on bank lines of credit for its working capital. Its unrestricted assets in its endowment are minimal. Unrestricted means there are no strings attached, that the school and the trustees have flexibility to spend those funds, and RPI's level of unrestricted funds is very low. And now we're looking ahead in 2 years at the likelihood that, well, almost the certainty that the school is going to have to do a major bond issue, because there's $205 million of bonds coming due. And I want to caution, I don't think this is anything that's an immediate crisis, but it's certainly a long-term competitiveness issue when you're carrying such a heavy debt load and you have minimal liquidity. Means you can't continuously invest in programs, you can't expand your facilities or keep them up. I mean, the best example of that are the numbers for the depreciation on the fixed assets, and that they have continuously now, over the last 5 years, exceeded the amount of new capital expenditures. So from a credit standpoint, that's always bad, because you're depleting your asset base as it gets older, and you're not replenishing it at least an equivalent rate. So the infrastructure is aging, in other words. This one has caused a lot of controversy. Obviously, it's a negative-looking chart, but there are two things at work here. One is just the change in the wealth distribution in the country. Some of this is a reflection of the fact that most alumni giving is coming from fewer people. So the participation rate is declining. But when we stack this up against other schools, ours seem to be more precipitous of a decline. And what it tells us is our alumni are disengaged and they're unhappy. And when you have a low endowment level, that's a problem. So let's go on ahead. Okay, so we looked at what is the giving trend. And you can see at the start of the Rensselaer plan, there was a lot of excitement, but the numbers for annual giving and bequests are erratic, because sometimes big donors give lumpy gifts. So we smoothed it out, and that's the red line. It's a 3-year trailing average. And you can see the clear trend in the early 2000s was very strong. There was a lot of excitement about the Rensselaer plan. And then, of course, the financial crisis hit, and everyone's wealth was impacted, and so alumni giving went down. But it hasn't recovered. It hasn't even gotten back close to the peak level. I think this is adjusted for inflation to give you a constant dollar value. And this is maybe the biggest concern. Why are our alumni not engaged? Why are they not contributing more? Why are they unhappy? So we've been trying to answer that question. So financial comparisons. Just another example, or a few examples of the relative weakness of the financial situation is the Forbes ranking. We got an overall ranking of C. When you compared us to the schools ranked 11 through 100. We didn't count the top 10 because we didn't think that was a fair comparison. The Ivy Leagues, I mean, they have more money than they can put to use. So their endowments are so large they don't need to charge tuition. So we looked at 11 through 100, and we still came out very poorly. You know, overall rating of C. We had negative average income, net income for a period. I think that's starting to rectify with the boost in the enrollment. We had a negative change in relative endowment over that span of time, an asset liability ratio below 2, and as I mentioned before, the ratio of the endowment to the liabilities fell below 1. You know, the liability ratio is a full third below that of any other similar school. We are endowment poor. We're trying to play the big league game with a minor league endowment. It's just the fact. So, and there are some more statistical comparisons about the relative change over a 10-year period. Our endowment grew about 8.5%, whereas MIT's is up 107, Georgia Tech 98%, Carnegie Mellon 108%. I mean, those schools have money coming in to invest in programs to remain competitive. We don't. Okay. So that ends my portion, and give you the general flavor of the financial situation. Now I'll turn it over to Ted.
Ted Merzak, I was introduced before. Glad you're all here. Louder. Okay. How's that? Better? All right. Didn't want to be yelling at anybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about the academics, and that's the business of RPI. We're in the business of educating people. And I think if you go to the website, nobody's mentioned our website, www.renewrensselaer.org. There's a lot more detail than I'm going to cover today. But I will hit some of the high points as we go along. And I also want to give you some added data on 5 of those points that you're looking at up there. And first off, I'd like to speak just quickly to point number 2, which is that issue of the decline in the student yield. There's been a lot of talk about increases in the amount of people that are applying to Rensselaer. That's really not much different than a lot of the other STEM schools. There's been a big resurgence in people that want to come to STEM schools, so we're about where the averages are from that perspective. But if you look at it from the standpoint of yield, and our understanding, the technical definition of yield is that's the single best indicator of the extent to which a college or university is a first choice school for students that are applying. So having a yield of 20%, which is what our yield is right now, raises the question of whether we're actually a safety school. And that would disturb me, looking back from the time that I came here. So it's something to think about when our peers, in comparison, are somewhere in the 30s. So we wonder about that one. So from the standpoint of academic rankings, okay, this, and I've got to just switch to my glasses so I can see the slides. Happens when you get to be my age. Way before the year 2000, where this chart starts, when I was in school, RPI, by whatever rankings were there, was somewhere around 25, 20, 25, something like that. Starting in 2001, we were sitting there at 49th, and it grew a bit, dropped a bit, and so on. But here we are, roughly 18 years later, we're back to 49th. So if you look at other national rankings, not just the U.S. News and World Report, something like the Wall Street Journal, we're now 83rd compared to other schools in our situation, well below comparable schools, and especially Georgia Tech. They're at 60, we're at 83. Georgia Tech's president is Bud Peterson. He used to be our provost. So, Bud Peterson used to be our provost. Looking at the student and faculty ratio, there's been a lot of hype on this in terms of new hires. We're told that there have been something in excess of 300 new hires into the faculty. But basically, those are replacing faculty that have been lost. The key here is that essentially there's been little improvement since 1998 when you look at student-faculty ratios, okay? We started out at 14-1. Right now, if you do the math and kind of massage this, you're down to 13-1. And I think that that's something, but even more critical, if you look at the chart and all these squiggly lines, we are well below the peer schools, once again, okay? Then we're going to take a look at the graduate engineering rankings. This slide here pretty much speaks for itself. We just have simply failed. We talked about being in a program with a national ranking at 19th, and when we look at the 2018 graduate engineering program, we're down to 41st. And we also have to, as John mentioned, the research rating, Carnegie research rating, we went from an R1 to an R2 over this period. So rather than research staying at a robust R1, it's decreased to an R2. Not good. Okay? Graduate enrollment. This, we think, is another Rensselaer plant failure. We talk about growing the research enterprise dramatically and greatly expanding doctoral programs. I think that when you look at the PhD enrollment of only about 3%, or you look at the declines or decreases in both the master's degrees and the full-time graduate enrollment, there's the drama. The drama is not the increase, the drama is the decrease. And that seems to be, again, headed absolutely in the wrong direction. The other one has to do with tenured and tenure-track faculty. Again, the drama's not here. Okay, there's something called a common data set, and it's used to show that there's been an increase of only, if you look from the period of 1998 up through 2018, been an increase of only 17 faculty. We're now sitting at about 330. The Rensselaer plan goal was for 500. So at 66%, or 2/3 of the way there after 20 years, I would say that that's not meeting the expectation. Okay, we're going to turn that back over to Pete to pick it up.
You know, there's some heart-wrenching stories I could tell you, and I'm just going to give you a brief outline of one. We actually are happy when people write back to us. You notice on our website that you have the ability to respond to us any way you want. It's at info@renewrensselaer.org. We have gotten several emails from parents of prospective students. Now, if you want a heartbreak, you read these emails, and we have them saved. You know, I read your website. I'm really disturbed about what I see. And you know what? Even though my kid got a Rensselaer medal, we're not sending him to Rensselaer. Now, if that isn't heartbreak, I don't know what is. Okay? That's the fallout from all of this. And again, we're not interested in tearing this school down. We're interested in increasing its status, increasing its effectiveness, and seeing it run like an enterprise that it really ought to be. You know, when Ted and I were here, and I think even John, I know when I applied to RPI, it was in the same league as MIT and Caltech. All right? I have dealt with plenty of MIT people in my career. I've never backed down. Okay? My education was every bit as good as theirs. I don't know if that's true anymore. I hate to say that. I really do. But that's one of the heart-wrenching things. I hope that's not true. I had a lady in front of me in the plane flying up here yesterday who heard me talking to a guy next to me who was a graduate of Williams. And she turned around and said, "My son is a student at RPI now, sophomore. And would you be willing to talk to him? He needs a little help in understanding the business world and what's involved." And I said, "Sure, I'll be happy to." You know, I could have used that opportunity to talk about Renew Rensselaer, but I'm not going to do that. That's how we are. We're not going to tear this place down. We want to improve it and make it better, and we think we can be a part of it, and you too. All right, let's talk about governance and leadership. This is our final topic. All of you must be aware of what's going on with the student union, especially the younger graduates. Why that had to happen, I have no earthly idea. Bill Chris, who's a member of our group, was the president of the union in '68. He's a graduate in '68. He's livid about this whole thing. I mean, everything worked just fine. Why touch it? It was great for the students who were running the union. It's not that way anymore. We have talked to a number of faculty and staff directly. not through third parties, the morale is terrible. So that's the only way I can describe it. That's bad. Doesn't have to be that way. We have a culture of fear on campus. Ask some of the students who've been here the last couple of years if they didn't fear reprisals and insane things. I just wonder where this stuff comes from. The financial transparency hasn't been what it should have been. I mean, part of the problems we discussed with the board of trustees, the chairman in particular, perpetual succession. That's one of our key hot buttons. We'd like to see 2 people on the board of trustees who are not doing the pay for play. Well, we got shuffled out of the room right after that. I mean, we don't want to hear about that. Bring your money or you're not going to be on a trustee board. And the last point here I want to make, this issue, I might want to call it a brouhaha. That's a kind of an interesting term anyway, with the RAA. We thought it was appropriate that we should work through the RAA. We're alumni. You're alumni. Why not work through the RAA and get this information out? We asked 2 times earlier this year to address the board of RAA. We got stiff-armed both times. Okay? Okay, so we looked at the bylaws, and the bylaws said you can have a special meeting if you have 100 signatures on a petition. We gathered over 100 signatures in about 3 days. We submitted it to the RAA. We said, we'd like to have a special meeting. Here's all the signatures that we have. Heard nothing, heard nothing, heard nothing. They were supposed to schedule that within 5 days. Oh, well, we're going to wait. We're going to see what the administration wants to do. They want to be part of the meeting. And, of course, our response was, what do you mean part of the meeting? They're not graduates of the school. Maybe some are, but most aren't. The staff, the administration, they don't have any business at the meeting. They can't talk. Okay, this is for Rensselaer alumni. Well, we finally said to the president of the RAA, okay, we're going to have the meeting during reunion and homecoming weekend, today. What a surprise. Alumni will be on the campus. Okay, we wanted to engage you, to have you be part of this. Well, that wasn't good enough for the administration. They decided they wanted to have it next Monday week, which is October 8th, which is Columbus Day, a holiday for a lot of people, at 8:30 in the morning. Okay? You know, you want to send a message of we don't care about you? There's your message. All right? And the RAA wanted to set this meeting up as sort of a debating society. We could make a presentation, the administration would be able to present. There's nothing to debate. These problems that we're bringing to your attention are not problems that the administration could fix in the main. Not some of them are, but not a lot of them. These are board problems. Okay? We're not interested in debate at all. The meeting is supposed to be following the exact petition points that we made, and only that. And it became a town hall type meeting. Completely unacceptable. And you all probably have gotten the email from us saying that's why we're not going to this meeting. Can you hold your question?
The 1 hour.
Pardon?
The 1 hour that the meeting was scheduled for. 1 hour.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You can stay as long as you want.
No, the RAA on the 8th. Okay? Now, we had a discussion yesterday, actually John did, with the president of the RAA. We may have seen some movement. We're not sure. We'll see how that pans out. But I mean, the interesting part of this is, you know, we go through a lot of effort and time. I don't know how many conference calls we've had over the last 2 years. At night, you know, travel, going places, doing what we've been doing, and we're dismissed as gadflies. Okay, that is an absolute word that was used in our presence. Okay? One thing they didn't count on is the fact that I know Ted feels this way, Bill does, John does, and our others. I played basketball here at RPI. I played to the last buzzer, okay? I never gave up. And Ted's not giving up, and John's not giving up, I'm not giving up, and Bill Chris isn't giving up. And neither are these young people that are working with us in the back. This is going to continue until this gets out, everybody acknowledges the issues, and we work towards a solution. Just a couple of things on the union issue, and we are not a part of the Save the Union group. We certainly sympathize with them where they're trying to go. But, 127 years of successful operation, and now all of a sudden the administration has to control it? Somebody explain that to me, why that's important. I don't get it. Okay? And then the administration's claiming no changes have been made. Come on. Ask some of the students about changes, those who have been involved with the student union. And then they had a director appointed recently with very little input. The interviews and other things were conducted during the summer when some of the students weren't even available. The parts and pieces of this just aren't right, just don't fit. As I told you earlier, we've talked to a lot of faculty and staff. The same message comes out from every one of them. Not in a group setting. You talk to them one-on-one. And they don't like it, okay? It's top-down governance. We'll tell you what to do, and you'll do it. And that may be a little strong, but how many of you feel that way? I hate that. I hate that. Nobody's going to tell me what to do, okay? Especially my own company. We had a vote of no confidence a number of years ago. The faculty senate was dissolved. The faculty is not, and I guess the staff too, they're not speaking out. Okay, this used to be an organization that was collegial, like most colleges and universities are. Shared governance, you could speak your mind. Apparently that's gone by the wayside, sadly. Jeopardizing their jobs. And we're not trying to put anybody's job in jeopardy at all, but what they're telling us privately is scary. And the thing that strikes me, above all, is the fact that we have one of the greatest mottos of any school I can imagine. Why not change the world? I love that motto. As an entrepreneur, that's where it's at. Okay? And that's an entrepreneurial bent to the school. That's what that's how you have to think as an entrepreneur. Changing the world. Changing at least a part of the world. And we've got faculty now that won't speak up because they're afraid of their jobs. How are they going to do this? Okay, it's just not adding up. This culture of fear thing, other people who are better at writing have written about this and talked about this than certainly we are, but be careful about what you say. They're going to round you up kind of deal. If they can find you on a video screen, tearing down posters that are placed in places that are supposed to be public places. This has all been out there. I'm sure you're all aware of it. It's this close to disgraceful. Okay? You want an upset campus? Come back in the 60s when I was there and Ted was there. This place was mayhem during the Vietnam War, okay, just like any other school. But this stuff seems trivial to us, to Ted and I, compared to what we were experiencing in the 60s. But it's happening and it's not good, all right? John talked about this, the difficulty in access to public financial information. We found conduits to get that now. And, we think this Association of Fundraising Professionals has a donor bill of rights. I think this is a good thing. It's like kind of best practices for schools. We would certainly be delighted if RPI would sign on to that and do what they suggested to do in terms of best practices. I guess we're not there yet, but maybe someday we can hope. Okay. All right, these two slides show really our platform. This was presented to the chairman of the Board of Trustees, to the vice chairman, and another member of the board a year and a half ago. In New York, the four of us with the three of them across the table. We had a PowerPoint presentation. We discussed these issues. We went nowhere. Okay? Pardon?
You say which board members?
Chairman, vice chairman, and another board member. Okay? That information's available on a website. All right? And the chairman is a fairly new chairman. Yeah. Yeah, we talked to the previous one too, and that got nowhere. But we had this meeting, and it was disheartening to say the least. Anyway, we asked for them to talk or to consider policies about governance and transparency, and the Association of Governing Boards of Colleges and Universities. They have some really good literature and good best practices. We think that's something RPI ought to adopt. Got nowhere with that. Having regularly scheduled open meetings where people could talk to each other and voice their concerns and positions, that didn't go anywhere. Our sense is it's getting worse, not better. We wanted to see 2 members of the board be elected by the RAA. John's had a lot of experience because his wife's a graduate of Dartmouth, and was it 1/3? 1/3 of the board of trustees at Dartmouth are elected by their alumni association. We've only asked for 2. Nowhere. Not hearing you. Bring money. That was the only answer. If your checkbook's big enough, you can be a board member. Pay to play, it's called. Okay?
What do they want for board seats?
There's no specific number. But it's a lot more than I have in my bank account. We thought the Rensselaer magazine ought to have some independent voice. Have, perhaps an editorial column or something that wasn't filtered. No, that wasn't going anywhere. The union we've talked about, debt reduction, endowment, trying to move our endowment to $2 billion by its 200th anniversary. That is a huge challenge. Huge. But we're never going to get there. We'll never even get close to that unless we have people like you engaged and interested in talking to your friends and others about doing it. We have to be part of the solution. And that's how we approach the board. That's how we approach the RAA. We want to be part of the solution. But you've got to acknowledge the problem first. We can't get to the solution unless you understand you have a problem. And all we keep hearing is, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine, leave us alone, leave us alone. We're not buying it. Sorry. I've been involved in big companies and small companies. When the CEO and others at the organization don't perform, they don't hang around. It's that simple. Okay? That's the platform. It's available on renewrensselaer.org if you'd like to study it in more detail. Bottom line is we got nowhere in talking to the trustees. We think it's important maybe if we can open a dialogue with the RAA, that the RAA can potentially adopt the same platform, and we can have some dialogue that makes sense. We can actually make some differences and get somewhere. All right, what are the consequences of inact? What if we don't do anything? What if we just stop? All right? If the alumni don't hold the administration and board responsible for the decline in metrics, who will? The students? No. The prospective students? Unlikely. Okay, the faculty are depending on, and staff are depending on a paycheck? Unlikely. We're the only ones that can make the difference. All right, and it's really important. There's financial risk out there today. John painted the picture. It's not pretty. And I think John characterized it the right way. You want to play in the big leagues, and you got a minor league budget. Not going to work. Okay, the alumni have to be part of the solution. The drop in academic standings and programs eventually will impact recruiting, yield, and certainly have financial implications. These things are all tied together, folks. I'm sure you've all put that together in your mind already. I've never met a dumb RPI graduate. Never once. We're all good. We're all smart. Put it all together. Okay? They all work together. It all fits in a nice little package. That third bullet point's a hard one to deal with, but I think those of you who have been on the ground and tried, that's how we feel. That's how we've been rebuffed, frankly. We're troublemakers. We don't want to be troublemakers. We want to be solution providers. We're interested in trying to make this better. not worse. The Rensselaer plan hasn't met its objectives. Okay, we're well below top tier. We have no financial flexibility to make the changes right now. I've characterized this, as I've looked back at the last 20 or so years, I came to the conclusion that the Board of Trustees in the late 90s decided they wanted to take RPI from where it was to some version of MIT West. Okay? That's what they wanted to be. Now, you all know, are all old enough to know, RPI's traditional focus is on undergraduate engineering education. MIT's was not. All right? So MIT's a great school. They've had nothing but great reviews for many, many, many years. And our Board of Trustees, I think, cooked up a big plan. They were going to spend whatever it took, and they were going to make us MIT West. Guess what? That plan was overly ambitious. It was not capable of being executed with the funding levels. The financial crisis of 2007 and 8 hit. And then all of a sudden, we have this urge to control everything. Don't put out a bad press release. Don't be transparent about this. Take control of the student union. Don't talk to these gadflies. They're no good. Okay? It went downhill, downhill, downhill. Ted used to work there. He knows, and some of you, we've met today, who are employees there. You know the story. When we talk to you one-on-one, we get the real story. And it's not a pretty picture. It really isn't. And, I think we ought to be looking forward to our 200th anniversary as a celebratory event. This is a big deal. Okay? The oldest technological, English-speaking, whatever it was, okay? This has been a great school for a long time. There's no reason why it shouldn't be one of the top in the country. No reason, maybe even the world. But we're not heading that direction at all. One more. All right, here's my plea for action on your part. Sign up to support our platform if you haven't already done so. Very easy, renewrensselaer.org, sign up, and talk to 10 of your friends who are not here today, get them to sign up. Numbers talk, and I think the more we have signed up, the better for everybody. Don't be afraid to send an email or a letter to Arthur Golden, Kareem Muhammad, or Greg Easton. Go ahead, send it to them. Tell them where you are. Here's how I feel about it. I listened to this presentation. I read the Renew Rensselaer website. Everything seems credible from what I've read and heard and understood. What are you doing? Fix the problem. First of all, identify raise your hand and say, okay, I get it. Your problem is well defined now. Now let's get on to a fix. You all can think back. This is Engineering 101. Don't you remember this? Freshman year, sophomore? Define the problem first. Then you can get to a solution. But if you're not willing to define the problem, you're never going to get there. And that's what we think is some of the biggest problems. And consider, if you're going to provide any funding and financial support, consider maybe targeted to clubs, sports teams, whatever. I will tell you that we learned that if you give $1, 10 cents out of that dollar goes to a general fund. So if you think you're giving $1 to the basketball team, you're only giving 90 cents. 10 cents out, or 10% of that skimmed off the top. Join your local alumni chapter, wherever it might be. 1 second. This is the last slide. Then we're going to go into Q&A. And voice your concerns there. We've got to get this message out. We've done a lot of hard work for 2 years. Many of you have come into this meeting and been very complimentary of the work we've done. You don't know how much that means to us, because we haven't gotten many compliments in the last 2 years. Okay? Quite the opposite. We're gadflies, we're problem, we're nothing but bad people. We hate the institution. That nothing could be further from the truth. That is absolutely not true. We want this school to be back to where it was when we were there, at least. Okay? And there's no reason why it can't be. That's the end of the presentation. We've gone probably further than we hoped. Timing. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.